So 28 Days Later not only changed that subgenre forever, but it also kind of brought it back to life. So the sequel, 28 Weeks Later, with a new director, new writers, and a new cast, were they able to recreate some of that magic again? Well, let's talk about it. What is up, everyone? Welcome to Mad Blood, and welcome to movie number 2 in my 28 Days Later review series, leading up to 28 Years Later, which, of course, next we're going to talk about the second movie in the franchise called 28 Weeks Later, which was released 5 years after the original in 2007. And like I just mentioned a second ago, 28 Days Later definitely in a lot of ways revitalized this subgenre, added some new fresh things that we'd kind of never seen before. These infected creatures that aren't really zombies that mindlessly, slowly move throughout the movie. No, these things are fast. These things are full of rage. These things are absolutely brutal. Not only just that, but the movie also looked very unique. Shooting that movie, a lot of it on those Canon DV cameras, was definitely pretty fresh, especially for that era, because it made it feel very early 90s to me, but also at the same time, didn't feel like a budget constraint. Yes, that movie had a small budget and then just popped. It had about half the budget of this movie, but it didn't feel like that. It felt very, very intentional for a certain look they were going for in that movie. I just think 28 Days Later is an incredible movie. And in some ways, with 28 Weeks Later, they decided to go quite a different route with some of those things that I just mentioned that I'll talk about as this video goes along. And basically the premise of 28 Weeks Later is we're following NATO forces led by the United States. They're trying to establish this safe zone in London. And on top of that, we're also following Dawn, who's played by Robert Carlyle, and also his damn kids, who ruin all of the fun for everyone. And on top of that, the virus at this point has basically died off. Well, except for in Dawn's wife, who is technically infected, but she's not showing the normal signs that you would expect, which leads the scientists to believe that an immunity to the virus might be inside of her. And then Dawn decides to make out with her, kicking off a second outbreak in this movie. And we also follow a journey following Dawn's kids and trying to protect them because the immunity to the virus might also live inside of them. And the opening of this movie is such a blend of all of these different crazy emotions all at the same time. I mean, it is a blend of like anxiety, but also relief, but then also tension, and all of this regret at the same time. So the beginning of this movie kicks off in like northern England, I believe. There's this group of survivors who have found each other. Dawn is one of them, and his wife as well. They're having a meal, and then this random kid shows up at their door. He's like, "Let me in, please save me." And it turns out also, it's not just the kid. A bunch of infected had also followed this kid here. Then at one point in this opening sequence, Dawn is faced with this decision in this little room to either intervene between the infected and this little boy and his wife, or run. Intervening would pretty much mean certain death. If he runs, he'll have a little bit of hope of surviving. His kids are actually still out there, which gives him some reason to try to survive. And amidst all the chaos and everything going on, he just decides, hey, wifey, I'll see you later, basically leaving her to be slaughtered, we would assume. I mean, poor Catherine McCormick. First, William Wallace and Braveheart wasn't able to save her in that whole scene, and now this? I mean, Catherine, you might need to start rethinking your taste in men. But especially once Dawn gets on that little fishing boat on that river, you've got the other guy trying to survive as well. He's fallen into the water. They're surrounded by infected. It's pure chaos. And the way that it's all shot, I think, is really, really effective and works for me. And also, he starts to take off, and it seemingly is really quiet and peaceful. It's almost a moment where the audience can kind of exhale a little bit after all of that madness and emotion. But inside of Dawn's head, man, his brain is probably just full of regret and relief also at the same time, but also chaos and anxiety and all these different emotions going on as he's peacefully kind of going away, knowing that his kids are still alive and he still has a chance to see them. And now, typical for this franchise, we get the time jump. We're now finding out that the infected have essentially starved up to this point. A lot of U.S. forces have moved into the London area to try to establish this safe zone. Basically, the rebuild has begun. Society is kind of seeing themselves as being on the other side of the hill, and they're starting to regroup and move on with this second phase of basically mankind. So we start off the rest of the story now 28 weeks later. But outside of that opening moment of the movie, in this entire first half of the movie, almost nothing really happens. Don, gets reunited with his kids. They go to this survivor compound of like 15,000 civilians and all of that. And I get it is normal in movies like this to kind of have lulls in the action and lulls in the suspense to kind of show the journey of how these characters are getting to a certain place. We're getting to know these new characters more and more and more. But I think the first half of the movie, outside of that opening, honestly, is pretty boring. Even in the first movie, we have that moment where we're following the characters as they're trying to get to this radio message. But I think in that first movie, the way that it's acted and the way that it's shot, it keeps me more engaged than the stuff that we're seeing in a lot of the first half of this movie. I feel like a lot of this stuff is just kind of bland. We aren't really journeying through the countryside or anything like that. I feel like it's just a lot of standing around in a city. But with that said, oh, by the way, Don, I hate to break the news to you, man, but your wife is actually still alive. Well, technically, I guess. So, but I hope you prepared a speech for her or something, because the last time you saw her, you kind of got some apologizing to do. And what ended up happening is Don's kids, these little shits, ended up sneaking away to go visit their old childhood home. But it turns out Mom is actually in there hanging out, probably not feeling too good because, like I said, she is technically infected. So the group then rescues them and brings them all back. And Mom is like, hey, bitch, you remember that one time you left me to be just torn to shreds by these animals? Well, come here. Give me some sugar. And she does kind of get revenge, I guess you could say, even though it's probably not intentional, as Don goes and kisses her, and his ass then gets infected. And like I said, kicking off a second outbreak. And like I said, Don's wife is technically infected, but she's kind of able to talk and sort of, I guess, act normal-ish. But I love how nobody is even watching her. The woman who potentially has the cure to the virus that almost destroyed mankind. No reason to even survey her or even put anyone there to watch her. Yeah, let's just leave her alone. It's not like somebody's going to waltz in there and then get infected and potentially destroy all of mankind. No, that's not going to happen. One thing weird too is when all hell breaks loose. Don is infected and it seems like things are just snowballing out of control. Civilians are scattering like these little cockroaches. There's something about it, though, that just doesn't feel chaotic enough. I don't know. It's odd. It's either the lack of the correct type of music, it's the acting, the way it's shot. I don't know. There's something about it that doesn't feel as tense or, like I said, as brutal or chaotic or hectic as I feel like it should be. Even Idris Elba's character is like, well, we've lost control. I guess just shoot everyone. And I get that his character might be pretty desensitized because basically all of humanity has almost been destroyed and massacred over a very short period of time. But there's something about this sequence. I just don't love how it's filmed or how it's acted. I think they really could have done a better job just making it feel more brutal, more tense, and more just hectic. I also think this movie spends way too much time on that entire evacuation scene where Jeremy Renner and that group of civilians are trying to get out of this bombing zone. I just don't really think there's anything all that interesting in that scene to me, or tense, or really even unique. If anything, it's actually kind of corny at times. Like that moment when that sniper's in the building and they're trying to bait him out so that Jeremy Renner's character can get a clear shot on him. I feel like it's just something I've seen so many times before and done better in so many other movies before. I feel like a lot of the stuff in this entire evacuation scene, a lot of the fat should have just been trimmed down and just condensed a bit. And on paper, this is a very good cast. But even Idris Elba's character, he's just kind of there. They don't really let him open up his bag and really show what he can do. He just comes across as like any old generic military leader in this movie. And for the rest of the cast, I mean, there are some solid faces that you'll definitely recognize who have done a lot of great things in movies before. But like, for example, like Jeremy Renner's character, they just don't have a good enough script or maybe weren't directed well enough to make it just really work for me. I also think they should have kept Dawn's character, a human, a little bit longer in this movie. And I get that in this movie he's a very unlikable character, and kind of as revenge, they make him infected because he is basically a piece of shit. And yeah, on one hand, Robert Carlyle as an infected, I mean, that is a pretty scary ass infected. I think it looks great and really, really works. But on the other hand, he's such a great actor. So I feel like just having him run around and snarl at people in the whole, like, basically second half of this movie kind of feels like a waste of his skills. But hey, at least from that first moment we saw that helicopter, I was hoping they were going to do exactly what they did end up doing with that helicopter, and everything just after the evacuation. Once it hits daytime, fortunately, it does kind of pick up a little bit, but once they use that helicopter as basically an infected blender, that's a pretty cool scene in this movie. And one thing they did a really good job of in the original movie is creating a villain outside of just the infected, which I personally think is a really important thing to do in this subgenre. I mean, if you really only want bad things to happen to these like brain dead, flesh-eating creatures, I feel like that kind of makes things just uninteresting. And unfortunately, in this movie, they do kind of go back to just making us only really hate the infected, at least from my perspective. I mean, why would we look at the military in this second movie as really like the villains? First of all, they're doing what they're commanded to do. Secondly, I understand there are some civilians and children and women and all of that are getting killed in all of this chaos as they're telling them basically just to shoot everyone. But it's kind of justified. It's like, all right, you got to kill this small group of people or potentially destroy all of mankind if this does potentially spread like it very easily could. So we have that angle of it as well. So obviously it's kind of like, well, we better be more safe than sorry. Whereas in the original movie, they come across those soldiers who are basically just these animals that want to do terrible things to the women in their group. And here, there's just not that visceral feeling of revenge or the intensity of hoping that the villain will die in the end, or the anxiety that the villain might actually win in the end. This movie just doesn't really create that, which definitely is something missing from the movie. But with that said, it does get a little scary later on in the movie as they're trying to avoid the tear gas. They're going down into this subway. It almost kind of turns into a little bit of a found footagey kind of a vibe to the movie as they're using like the night vision scope on the rifle to navigate through this super dark subway. They're walking over these bodies and all of that. It's got some eeriness to it. But with that said, all right, guys, how in the hell do they just keep running into Dawn everywhere they go? Seriously, though, what are the odds? But after that, Dawn eventually does bite his son, infects his son, and not surprisingly, he has the same type of weird immunity that his mom had. And Dawn's son and his sister eventually fly away in the helicopter that was at the rendezvous there waiting for them in the stadium. And honestly, guys, I feel like this movie just kind of ends on a whimper. We then cut to 28 days later. It's like sunset in Paris. You can see the Eiffel Tower. There's some infected running and all of that. Obviously, sequel fuel right there. And on one hand, of course, like a great version of this franchise set in Paris with this type of infected, that could be pretty badass. But also, I just don't think the end of this movie as the two siblings do end up getting rescued by the helicopter and taken off, and then we cut to this random shot in Paris. I just don't think it's all that intense. It definitely does not end the movie with a bang. And yes, not as good as the original, but they still do an effective job of making London feel like this empty place that has been through a massive pandemic. I do think they do an effective job of that. They also do a great job with the infected, once again in this movie, making it seem like these are not something you would ever want to come across. These things are brutal, these things are fast, and these things are nasty. But this movie just flat out feels way more generic than the original. The original, it feels so British, but in a great way. The original just has so much charm. And again, this movie does have a good cast, but the cast in that original movie isn't good. The cast is great. I mean, I like Idris Elba and Jeremy Renner, but let's be honest, they're kind of generic actors. I mean, Jeremy Renner is pretty much known as store brand Jason Bourne. I mean, come on, the original, it's scarier, it's got a better cast, it definitely feels more original and more unique. The first movie also gets me really, really hyped for a sequel, whereas this movie, I'm kind of just like, yeah, I mean, I guess I would watch a sequel. However, with that said, first of all, it's been so many years. And second of all, I mean, Danny Boyle and Alex Garland are going to be back again for the new movie with a new cast. Couple that with how this new movie looks. I am absolutely hyped for 28 years later. And also from the little tidbits that I have seen, I've tried to avoid a lot of the spoilers and stuff like that. It very much looks like it's going to get back to a lot of that grit and grime that we saw in 28 Days Later. And I am here for it. But there you go, everybody. That is my review of 28 Weeks Later. Definitely a movie that has a lot of ups and downs for me, but regardless, very hyped, like I said, about that new movie coming out this week. I cannot wait. But if you want some more videos from me right now, go ahead and check out one of these videos next to me. If you don't want to miss future videos on the channel, the best way to do that is to make sure you subscribe and also turn on those notifications as well. All of my social media links will be down below in the description if you want to follow me over there. But thanks so much for watching, everybody. Just the fact that you wanted to spend some time watching this video is pretty damn cool. I really do appreciate it. But my name is Matt, and I will talk to you in the next one.